We mentioned Thursday's problems where there were glitches, and we mentioned that you and I got together right at the moment that these problems began. Well, it wasn't just the two of us. We had Larry O'Connor scheduled and to record a short video segment that we're about to show you here because we needed to get to the bottom of Thunderbolt. Specifically, Thunderbolt 4. What does it mean? What doesn't it mean? What matters about Thunderbolt to us Mac users? What doesn't matter to Thunderbolt 4 for us Mac users? Why is it a big deal? Why did Apple make it so nebulous on their M1 spec sheet that it says Thunderbolt / USB 4, but then in the specs lists Thunderbolt 3 and USB 3? Like, what does all this mean? There's been lots of stuff going back and forth, and we figured the best person to have answer that question was Larry, because if they don't understand Thunderbolt, we're all screwed anyway. So, and thankfully, we're not, because they do. Now, you will get to peek into the worlds of John and I as we different camera angles for us, for those of you that are watching the video, and different microphones for us, for those of you that are just listening to the audio, because of the problems that we had getting this to work. We couldn't get our normal studio machines and the software that we use to do this to launch because of Apple's OCSP server, because we didn't figure it out at the time, because we had scheduled to be with Larry and we didn't want to waste his time. So we did this on a Zoom call and it worked out fine. And so, we're happy to include it here. Anything else you want to do before we set this up, John, before we launch with Larry?
Nope. I mean, Larry and his group are the experts.
Totally.
As far as I'm concerned, because they make Thunderbolt stuff. So.
Right.
Who better to ask? Yeah,
I will. We'll talk about it when it's finished. So here without further ado. Larry, thanks for coming on the show to help explain Thunderbolt and Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 3. Of course, this is Larry O'Connor from Otherworld Computing at macsales.com. It's great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, it's been way too long. Thanks for having me.
Way too long. Yeah. So Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 3, you guys have a Thunderbolt 4 product. You have lots of Thunderbolt 3 products. Apple has a product this week that's labeled Thunderbolt / USB 4. Tell us why. I want to know what Thunderbolt 4 is versus Thunderbolt 3, why we as Mac users either care or don't care.
Well, the truth of the matter is, a Mac user, there's really not a lot here with Thunderbolt 4. Thunderbolt 4 really applies to PCs. And why it applies to PCs is that, whereas on the Mac, from the very first Macs with Thunderbolt 3, we've had all the capabilities that Thunderbolt has had to offer. This isn't the case in PC Windows land. On a PC, there's a variety of different ways that Thunderbolt could be implemented. And a lot of those did not include all the features and capabilities, display support, the full 40 gigabits of bandwidth, power delivery. Some PCs, that are labeled Thunderbolt 3 even need to have an additional card installed before you can actually connect Thunderbolt 3 devices. Apple, from day one, we got the whole show. We got everything that Thunderbolt could offer. And every Thunderbolt Mac that has this port, it has this Type-C connection, is able to connect with all Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4 devices. And that's something else that's not going to be the case on the PC. Apple controls the ecosystem. So when we're looking at Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4 devices, when Apple issues an OS update, they're able to control what features become available. On the PC, you don't have that. So whereas it is possible for some Thunderbolt 3 PCs to support some of the new features that have been announced with Thunderbolt 4, even though Thunderbolt 4 is really Thunderbolt 3, which we can go back and forth on. It's confusing. I love what Apple did. Not all PCs will ever be able to use Thunderbolt 4 because that is now dependent on individual manufacturers, individual implementations, and what those folks choose to support. So we've got it really good being on the Mac side. And to really answer your question, because it's every time I try to do this, it's so simple, but it's so complicated because Intel wanted to call it Thunderbolt 4. Apple made it really simple. They just call it Thunderbolt because Thunderbolt on Mac hasn't changed.
Got
we
it.
still have Thunderbolt is still, everything is fantastic today as it was when we first had Thunderbolt 3, on those 2016 machines. The only thing that we do now have, that they did badge under Thunderbolt 4 with peripherals is a new hubbing technology. And this is great. It lets us add more Thunderbolt ports, to an existing Mac. And we waited years to do this.
Okay,
OWC,
so hubbing is the new thing that we get. Do we get this with the M1 based Macs that Apple announced this week, depending on when you're listening?
This is a new feature of Thunderbolt, and it's not limited to Thunderbolt 3 or Thunderbolt 4. It's a new Thunderbolt feature that is available for all of us through macOS 11. Just like with previous Thunderbolt chipsets and new features, a new update, it's taken a new Apple OS, a new update to the OS, typically enables these features. And now it's for the first time ever with the OWC Thunderbolt Hub and Apple's macOS 11 Big Sur that we can add more Thunderbolt ports.
So wait a minute. You're telling me that I can take my 2019 iMac that only has 2 Thunderbolt ports. I can get your hub or someone else's hub. Of course, yours the only one I know about. Right. Yeah. But in theory, any hub that supports hubbing and
any Thunderbolt hub, it's got to be Thunderbolt hub.
Not USB. Right. And attach that to my 2019 iMac and now because I'm running, or I will be running macOS Big Sur 11, whatever version, however we want to say it, that will give me hubbing, not just on the new Macs, but on the old ones too.
Correct.
That's outstanding.
Now to be clear, so there's actually, I just want to verify this, but I'm looking here. So Intel has a data sheet. Intel makes the Thunderbolt 4 chip. Yes?
Oh, yeah. Well, they don't really, it's not a chip anymore. Here, we have 2 different.
Well, they mention in their write-up here, they say it's going to be part of Tiger Lake. And then they also mention on this sheet here that there's a, let me see.
We have Thunderbolt 4
controller 8000. So it looks like there are a couple of ways that they're deploying this, but isn't it all boiling down to being a piece of Intel technology?
Well, Thunderbolt went open source. Intel opened the Thunderbolt standard up last year.
Right. Okay.
And if you look at the Mac, the new M1 Mac, that's actually the first system with non-Intel silicon to have Thunderbolt support.
Interesting. Okay.
But going on, West Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 4 does, and this is the thing, there's no USB 4 peripherals, and Apple is not currently supporting USB 4. But Thunderbolt 4 technically incorporates USB 4, which is also backwards compatible with 3.2 and 3.1 Gen 2, 10 gigabit, and all the way back down to USB 2. So the only thing that's different, from Thunderbolt 3 on a PC, from a PC with Thunderbolt 4 is also, well, let me take that back. The only thing that's different between a Mac with Thunderbolt 3 and a PC with Thunderbolt 4 is that Thunderbolt 4 also promises that you can use USB 4 devices at full speed. But in terms of Thunderbolt capabilities are still the same under so-called Thunderbolt 4 as they have been with Thunderbolt 3. It just means if I buy a PC, which I don't plan to, but if I do buy a PC and it says it has Thunderbolt 4, there's no longer any fine print about exactly what parts of Thunderbolt are there.
I see. So Thunderbolt 4 is a marketing term that Intel is using to do essentially what Apple has done on Macs all the way through, that when you see Thunderbolt 4 on a PC, you're getting the full feature set. It won't be certified from Thunderbolt 4 if it doesn't have all the features. Is that the right way to say it?
That's absolute. There's no optionality with Thunderbolt 4 on the PC, whereas there was with Thunderbolt 3.
Got it.
Apple had that optionality, but Apple chose to always include the full implementation. They've always given us everything. And, kudos to Apple for doing that with Thunderbolt 3 and keeping that door open so that, like I said, this new hubbing technology, a simple OS update, maybe not such a simple OS update, but an OS update, move on to Big Sur, and now you can add more ports for the first time.
That's outstanding. Okay, you have explained this better than anyone ever has, and I knew you were the right one to get on here to tell us this. So I do have another question to ask you though, and it's about cables.
Awesome.
Does Thunderbolt 4 finally bring us the one cable to rule them all?
It does, absolutely. Thunderbolt 4 cables, again, considered a marketing position, and it's going to be confused between the Mac and if every PC had done what Apple did, we still have Thunderbolt 3.
Got it.
But the new Thunderbolt 4 cables are absolutely 100% universal, and universal in the sense that whether you connect it, it's obviously C to C, but whether it's a USB port you're going off of, whether it's a power brick, whether it's, whether your power adapter is powering your laptop, whether it's a Thunderbolt 3 device, Thunderbolt 4 device, although Thunderbolt 3 and 4 devices technically are all Thunderbolt 3. But to the main point, if it says Thunderbolt 4, whatever the maximum performance, maximum power that device and that host support working together, that cable will provide. None of this stuff like you have now where some of the longer Thunderbolt 3 cables, are half speed.
Yeah.
Or if it's an active Thunderbolt cable, it works great for Thunderbolt, but then it's only USB 2 speeds if you connect it from a USB 2 device, USB 10G device, or those Type-C cables. And Type-C is actually, I would say USB-C cables are almost kind of a risk out there.
Oh, yeah.
They look the same, but not all Type-C cables are certified to carry power.
Right.
And
not all of them can carry the same speeds of data, as many listeners to this show have found out trying to use their Apple cable with a hard drive. Yeah.
That is the number one tech support call we get. If it's not a Type-C cable that they plugged in, it's the Apple Type-C cable. And it's an Apple cable. It's great quality. Why is my dock not working? Why is my USB dock not working? Let alone a Thunderbolt device. Yeah. It's got, it's up to 100 watts on the cable. The cable's power is safe, but it's only, if you use that to connect a data device or a dock, even our USB 10 port dock, it operates at USB 2. A lot of things don't work over USB 2.
That was my disappointment when, when I got this new machine. It came with an 85 watt adapter and a cable, and I'm like, oh, well, this does data and power. Well, kind of, as you said, the cable that Apple ships does USB 2, but it does full power. It'll handle the 85 watts or whatever the adapter. So I eventually found a cable, as Dave has, I'm sure, that will do full power and full speed, but it was kind of hit and miss because I bought a few cables that I had to return because they wouldn't offer all of the functionality. It was very
there you go, Larry.
Bought them from us, you would have been just fine.
Well, of course.
Yes.
But with Thunderbolt 4, if a cable says Thunderbolt 4 on it, we're good to go. It will do all of those things. And should we expect those cables to be like super expensive, middle of the road? Where are we going to find those when they find them?
No, they're going to be really reasonable. 1 meter Thunderbolt 4 cables are going to be in the $20 to $24 range,
okay.
And mind you, this is a cable not just certified for Thunderbolt and up to 40 gigabits of data, but it's also fully certified for the 100 watts of carrying current. So it's not just somebody saying it's 100 watts.
Sure.
These are officially certified. All of our cables, including our USB cables that carry power, go through actual power certification and have real certificates, for that operation. I mean, they're easy. I mean, we don't just say, well, it should work and go. And I'll be honest, in terms of Apple and the data only being USB 2, an Apple cable is always going to carry the maximum 100 watts that anything you plug USB-C into could put out.
Right.
I'd much rather have an issue with how much data it does than have an issue with a cable that, sure can carry all the data, but maybe it's not really designed. It's not been built to properly handle, 60 watts, 85 watts, or 100 watts. And then you plug it into something that takes that draw and it's putting that current through and you wonder, wow, that cable's getting hot. This is something we don't have to worry about with Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt cables are certified through and through. And Thunderbolt 4 cables, now it's not going to matter.
Right.
Power, USB, Thunderbolt, whatever it is that's C to C, the maximum capability will always be engaged with a Thunderbolt 4 cable. So you can cut all those other cables up and end, those cable nightmares.
All right. So you have delivered it not only fantastic news, but easy to understand news for us. And that's the key with all of this.
I really want to thank you for coming on the show, Larry. This has been super enlightening. And I can't imagine a better person to have explained this all to us. In fact, I don't know where I would find them. So thanks for agreeing to do this, man.
No, I appreciate you doing it. I mean, I hope you know, I mean, we have the largest selection of Thunderbolt solutions, the best Thunderbolt solutions on the planet. If I couldn't talk about this, there'd be something really seriously wrong here. But this is our backyard, this is our space, and really, I've been thinking about this and working on communicating this for a long time. And again, I really so applaud Apple for not coming out and calling it Thunderbolt 4. They call it what it is. Yeah. Thunderbolt with /USB 4. And even if you look at the specs on the M1 Max, they specifically say Thunderbolt 3. And it's not because it's not Thunderbolt 4. It's because Thunderbolt 4 really isn't Thunderbolt 4.
Well, there you have it, folks. Larry O'Connor from Otherworld Computing explains Thunderbolt 4 to us. They have this stuff. They've tested it. As Larry mentioned, they're the first vendor, at least, to announce a Thunderbolt hub. I believe we can get them in November. There was a question in the chat room, John, that I wanted to address.